Welcome back to our channel. Today we bring you the unexpected developments of the episode that aired on Wednesday, August 13th. The morning air over Fairmont Crest was heavy with the stillness that precedes a storm, the kind that is not made of wind and rain, but of human entanglements ready to unravel. Tyrell moved through the quiet of the kitchen with the casual confidence of someone unaware that the ground beneath him was beginning to shift. Samantha, in the next room, sorted through a stack of papers, her thoughts scattered between work deadlines and the fragile sense of stability she had been trying to maintain. Neither of them could see that forces outside their control were aligning to dismantle the fragile structure of their lives. Somewhere across town, Chelsea was staring at her own reflection, rehearsing words she had repeated a dozen times in her head. She had decided there would be no ambiguity this time, clear boundaries were necessary. Allison's name was already a weight in the room, even when she wasn't present. Chelsea's relationship with Allison had been a whirl of passion and chaos. The kind that left scars invisible to the eye but deep enough to make trust feel like an impossible luxury. And yet, Allison's persistence was relentless. Even now, despite being with Madison, she still circled back, as though some part of her could not let Chelsea go. Chelsea had no illusions about how this conversation would end. Allison was unpredictable, driven by impulses that cared little for the wishes of others. Drawing boundaries with her was like drawing lines in sand at the edge of a rising tide, an act of defiance more than an expectation of permanence. And yet, Chelsea was determined to speak the words, to make them real, if only for her own sanity. While Chelsea prepared for her confrontation, Uptown's neon lights promised warmth and music to Tomas and Kat. Their salsa night had been meant as a celebration, a chance to ignite the spark between them, to wrap their bodies in the rhythm of music and the language of movement. Tomas had imagined laughter and heat, a shared glow that would draw them closer. Kat, however, carried a silence that no song could fill. The intimacy they had shared the week before was still fresh in his mind, but to her, it seemed to linger like an echo she wasn't sure she wanted to hear. Tomas had felt something raw and alive in that night together, but Kat's detachment afterward made him question whether the connection had been mutual or if he had misread everything. She smiled when the music began, but her eyes carried distance, a truth Tomas would notice only when the night's energy failed to pull her closer. Meanwhile, Eva was sitting in her car outside her mother's home, wrestling with an irritation that felt too familiar. Leslie had a way of brushing aside things that mattered. A casual dismissal that often left Eva playing the role of the responsible one. The paper in question, the legal document suggesting Leslie was entitled to an inheritance, was not something to be ignored, yet her mother had done exactly that. In Eva's mind, this was another chapter in a long book of missed opportunities and impulsive decisions. She had urged Leslie to think again, to recognize what this could mean. But Leslie seemed uninterested in pursuing it. Eva feared that if her mother did claim the money, it would be spent recklessly, vanishing into whims and fleeting pleasures. If she didn't, it would still gnaw at Eva as yet another squandered chance. There was no outcome that left her at peace. In another corner of the neighborhood, Jacob and Naomi were grappling with truths too heavy to keep contained. The revelation that June was the biological mother of Tyrell and Samantha was a truth with teeth. It bit into the quiet order of their lives, threatening to tear it apart. They knew this would not be news the children could absorb without pain, and yet it was a wound that had to be opened if there was to be any chance of healing. The timing, however, was cruel. Martin and Smitty were making preparations for what they imagined would be a joyous reunion, their focus on building something whole from the fractured pieces of the past. The announcement Jacob and Naomi carried would strike like a sudden gust, scattering those pieces before they could be assembled. What complicated matters further was the shadow of legality that loomed over everything. Adoption processes were delicate. And if there were flaws in how Tyrell and Samantha's cases had been handled, it could open doors to disputes that no one was ready to face. Regina's presence in the background was a reminder of this possibility. She had never truly wanted to let the children go. And the fact that she had arrived at the agency too late to claim guardianship was a wound that had never healed. In her mind, this was unfinished business. And any gap in legal procedures was an opening she would not hesitate to use. The day's events were moving toward each other like rivers converging. Chelsea's fragile boundary, Allison's unpredictable persistence, Tomas's confusion over Kat's distance, Eva's frustration over her mother's choices, and the storm that Jacob and Naomi carried toward Martin and Smitty. Each thread was tightening, pulling the characters closer to moments where decisions could no longer be postponed. The world of Fairmont Crest often moved in slow, graceful arcs, but on this day, everything seemed to be accelerating toward collision. And when the collisions came, they would not be quiet. They would echo in every household, ripple through every relationship, and leave no one untouched. Choices would be made not because they were right, but because the moment demanded them. And when the day ended, nothing, neither love, nor trust, nor family, would look quite the same again.